we are slowly seeing people come in. So very good evening, good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are across the world. And we're very pleased to have you at this session on the Innovation Small Grant Accelerator platform, ISGAP. And we're going to celebrate the journeys of the grantees from the first cohort for ISGAP. And we have with us a stellar list of speakers today. So very excited to have all of you here on this session. I think I'll wait for 2 more minutes to allow a few more people to come in. And then we can kick off with introductory remarks from Sheila. So give us just 2 more minutes to allow more people to join in. And thank you for those of you who've joined us on time. Maybe in the meanwhile, I will introduce our speakers for today so that we move on with time and we keep time well. So we'll have introductory remarks from Sheila. Sheila Patel is the director of Spark, and many of us who've been in this space know her really well and she doesn't need a very long introduction for her work. We also have with us Srilata Kamala, who is the Principal Technical Advisor, Climate Change Adaptation from UNDP. And we have Alyssa Gomes from Adaptation Fund. The three of them will be giving us introductory remarks, each of them focusing on a different aspect of the ISGAP and the adaptation innovation marketplace. And then we have 4 panelists today who will be presenting their work first, and then we'll get into questions from all of you. So please type in your questions in the Q&A box, and if you have access to chat, so that we keep monitoring that and we'll ask your questions. We also have questions prepared for them, and I shall take on the moderation in that session. Within that, we have Sheila Patel, who's our first presenter, and she'll be talking about their work in Mumbai on decentralized wastewater and solid waste management systems. We have Anne Cecile, who's from La Voûte Nubienne, and she'll be talking about the Nubian Vault in Sahel and their work on innovation around climate-proofed housing that supports people in these regions from heat waves and the carbon credit mechanism behind it. Then we have Emmanuel from Moyo District Farmers Association, who will talk about their work in Uganda on work with refugee communities and climate-proofed agriculture. And finally, we have Jemuel, last but not the least, who will talk about their work on plantation in indigenous lands. He himself is an indigenous elder, so we're very excited, very pleased to have him here, and he'll talk a little bit about their community-led adaptation models in Philippines. So that's the lineup. Very excited, and I think we're at time and we can start with Sheila. Sheila, all yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the honor of kickstarting this process. It means a lot to us to be part of this cohort of organizations. And in my introductory thoughts, the first thing I want to say is that we are very proud of the fact that all of us who are intermediary professionals or organizations have taken up this amazing but very simple concept of taking things that matter to poor people, that are deeply of value and interest to them, to be the foundational focus of investigation with a view of producing knowledge simply but powerfully, so that the innovations, frugal or technically sound, can come into the transformation of poor people's lives. My organization, Spark, is now almost 40 years old. And every single thing that we do begins from what poor women and poor communities want to do, which is the exact opposite of what is happening today in the global development and climate space, where most of the solutions are thought up in the global north and resources are provided to the global south to produce the cookie cutter solutions. So this entire group of people here today are producing a completely disruptive alternative in which we are all producing ideas that confirm what communities want to do and build around their needs and aspirations tools to produce local adaptation practices and business models that serve these vulnerable and disadvantaged communities, be they women, indigenous communities, refugees, and people who are dealing with today the anticipated climate challenges of extreme weather and the disruptions that it provides them. Now, the very important thing for us to remember is that the most powerful thing in all adaptation is adaptation has to be deeply local. So you have a global conceptual framework, but the adaptation practice has to be adopted by individuals, communities, neighborhoods, cities, rural areas, and geographies, by people who find this as a useful, important transition to make that's good for the quality of their lives and is good for the planet. And for this disruptive change to happen, we need to realign the development and climate change stakeholders so that the local and the global sit side by side, that ideas and knowledge circulate freely, and that investment that comes to support the research outcomes is accessible to these people so that it's not just a good research which will produce a report, but it'll produce genuine innovative practices that will excite both the private and the public sector, but it will produce transformation in the lives of people. For all of us, we see that we need development investments and climate change investments. Poor people can't have one or the other. So it has to be a handshake. So if you're doing development, it has to have a climate lens. If you're doing climate, it has to have a development lens. And we really appreciate that UNDP and this whole amazing group of people are ready to explore this path. We didn't know each other before, but we have now become a community. And whenever we think of different projects, we think of each other's contributions to look at how we can learn from these things. And therefore, we will be one of the 4 presenters. And you will see from the diversity of what we do that we have certain similarities, which was mentioned by the previous speakers, that the ideas are local, they emerge out of frugality, simplicity, and clear-cut needs to provide social justice to those who are most disadvantaged. So I hope we have enough time, not only for you to listen to our presentations, but also for you to see how you too can become part of this community. So thank you, and back to you.
Thanks, Sheila. Next, we have Srilata Kamala from UNDP, who will give us an introduction of this GAP program.
Thank you, Shuchi, and what a genuinely wonderful pleasure. Thank you to Sheila Patel, who's really voiced the reason we all gather, and it is indeed disruptive. And it's honestly such a pleasure to see and be with the group of innovators, which is very refreshing. Not often that we gather in such a forum. And like Sheila, like you said, it's usually reports or conferences or hearing ideas that are sit in the ether somewhere, and it's hard to see how they get grounded. So it's a true pleasure, and UNDP is so proud to be a partner with Adaptation Fund and others. ICCCAD is here, and Global Resilience Partnership, who are helping organize, and what a refreshingly wonderful and consistent event Gobeshona has been. And so it's our pleasure to be here, and innovation indeed is so critical, and especially in the climate change adaptation space, where you know, because it's not a single metric like we see in mitigation, it's difficult to think about innovation and make room for innovation that's, again, around practices, technologies, business models, different ideas that come about locally grown, locally honed, and locally maintained, and that benefit the entire communities and build resilience in the communities. For UNDP, we have, in fact, over the last couple of decades now, you know, and especially since 2008, we've helped mobilize over $1 billion of funding from vertical funds and bilaterals to help implement projects on the ground. And yes, in the context of projects, we do often and mostly primarily engage quite a bit of the vulnerable communities, especially rural poor communities, and ensure there's inclusion. But this is a different kind of project, which is very close to at our heart, because it looks at, again, disruptions and ideas that can be that can foster and that can be fostered at the local level. And we strongly believe that, again, as Sheila Patel has said, look, you know, adaptation is local. And, you know, because people don't live their lives as development versus adaptation, again, that handshake, Sheila, that you mentioned is so critical. And they're best suited to understand, how do you build resilience that's transformative, that's long lasting. And for us, this platform here, supported by the Adaptation Fund, the ICCCAD project, is a platform not only of sort of sourcing, screening, and scaling up these ideas, but how do you bring together these practitioners in a way that helps share the results, insights, best practices that can inspire other innovators and know it's possible, in the principles of local adaptation, which is about devolving decision-making and financing to the local level. How do we look at scaling up these ideas? And the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator project is part of a platform called Adaptation Innovation Marketplace, which is supported by founding members, ICCCAD, Global Resilience Partnership, Climate Cake, UNCDF, and the LDC University Consortium. And the idea, again, like we said, is to share best practices, and Gobeshona is a great opportunity to do that. Now, under ISGAP, with the very first round of over 2 million in grant funding, we've supported around 22 organizations in 19 countries to foster and accelerate these adaptation innovations. And we aim to develop another 10 plus scalable solutions under, under this first cohort. And it's amazing to see, like, these small grants, they're reaching over 175,000 beneficiaries, over a third of them women. We're supporting over 2,200 hectares of land with restoration or regenerative agriculture, very community-based approaches to these innovations. And that's, by the way, equivalent in India to the size of the Indira Gandhi International Airport. So just to give a sense of the benefits and the impacts and results we're promoting through the Accelerator project. Now, I just wanted to highlight a few, and it'd be great to hear from the voices from the innovators themselves, but just to highlight a few, for example, in Brazil, we're supporting a local partner to improve food security and protect local ecosystems by and for indigenous people by expanding the production of acai berries. Over 100 hectares of land are now certified under sustainable agroforestry management, and over 25 tons of acai berries have been processed and sold. Of course, multiple benefits, especially in the face of multiple crises as a planet. It's great to see projects and innovations that have multiple benefits around land and indigenous people's rights and incomes and poverty alleviation and food security. So that's a wonderful example we're proud to be supporting. In Cambodia, 40 women are benefiting from a grant that's helping them grow and sell crickets as an alternative food source. And they've earned around $2,600 for the first ton of crickets farmed. and which is a more adaptive product due to the existing and future climate trends, especially with the year-round availability that's possible with this alternative food source. In Uganda, we're supporting a local partner that's teaching local communities aquaponics technology. And through an innovative lease to own model that promotes aquaponics, but also because it's community-based, it's also proliferating and replicating solutions for enterprise, for incomes, for livelihoods. About over 2,500 aquaponic kits have been leased to date, and the partner is now expanding, aiming to expand and to try to reach over 20 million of the local vegetable and fish market. So really innovations again at scale that benefit not just the entrepreneur, but often these models come from a place of passion and from a place of wanting to benefit the community, especially the most vulnerable. I just wanted to also share that we're now in the final stage of selecting our second cohort, and I'm absolutely assured, given the first stellar cohort of grantees, some of whom are here, that we'll be able to support more organizations like this. Another 2 million are expected in grant to local organizations, about 10 micro grants and 15 small grants. Micro grants are about 60,000 USD, small grants are about 125,000 USD each. So in today's session, like I said, very, very pleased to have with us about 4 of the first cohort of grantees implemented solutions to build resilience of women, youth, refugees, indigenous communities from India, Philippines, Uganda, Sahel, West Africa. Our gratitude and real pleasure and inspiration to have these local champions here with us today to share their knowledge, share their experiences, and inspire others to take up these kinds of innovations, and know that there is a support system and those of us behind you to help take these to scale. And this kind of transformative action is what is needed in the world today. And with the latest IPCC report, we know the window for adaptation is closing really fast. And so for us, transformative adaptation at scale, at the pace that is needed, is only possible when we ensure communities, enterprises, local actors at the heart of driving this change. So again, working together with our partners here today, I'm very, very confident that we will continue to empower the local communities to innovate, to accelerate. We look forward to continue to working with our cohort of grantees who will soon graduate and become part of our learning and a network for future generations of grantees, and I'm sure continue to do the wonderful work they are. We look forward to more partnerships and scale, and can't wait to hear some of these stories here. And again, our congratulations and thank you to everyone, especially Adaptation Fund, Jeff and others as well, and our partners who made this possible here. Thank you. Over back to you, Shuchi.
Thanks, Srilata. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And that just gets us excited about the future, I guess, with the new cohort coming in. Next, I'd like to invite Alyssa Maria Gomes. She's the Climate Change Innovation Specialist at Adaptation Fund, and she'll introduce the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator and the work that the Adaptation Fund does to promote innovation for locally led adaptation. Alyssa, over to you.
Thank you, Suchi, and good evening, everyone. And especially a warm thank you to our longstanding partner, UNDP, for inviting us to share about the fund's journey when it comes to innovation. I think everyone familiar with the Adaptation Fund is aware of the fund's track record of financing a locally led adaptation. All the Adaptation Fund projects through its single country and regional projects are funding adaptation action that involves stakeholders, that is locally led and is based on the context that the projects are being funded in. The Adaptation Fund's innovation facility, it emerged out of the fund's first midterm strategy. And the fund has always been innovating in its process. It brought into place a direct access modality and then much later, the enhanced direct access modality that really is devolving decision-making to local institutions and to local actors. And the fund's innovation facility is no different. The fund has a very broad definition of innovation, stressing that innovation can be new, innovation can be adapted, innovation can be improved, and most importantly, it's based on the local context. And in that respect, the fund initially launched its small grants for innovation, and this was accessible to its accredited national implementing entities. And these small grants had a purpose to mainly encourage and accelerate new innovations, but also then to create an evidence base for innovations that could be replicated and scaled up. Much later, the fund launched its large grants for innovation. And the large grants window aims at rolling out successful innovations from one country to another country, or from one country to a different region as well. And also scaling up viable innovations. So these would be innovations that have demonstrated viability at a small scale and then could be scaled up with adaptation fund resources, but also with other funders. Based on that, to mention that the fund has recently approved its second midterm strategy, and this is for the years 2023 to 2027. And an important principle that the fund has endorsed, being locally led adaptation, is now a cross-cutting pillar among the fund's priority areas. And under this facility, the fund is going to enhance opportunities for locally led adaptation through all of its funding windows and including innovation. The Adaptation Fund Innovation Accelerator was launched at COP25, and it was with this idea to expand the scope of actors that the fund can reach. There was a vision for launching this window. And the Adaptation Fund Innovation Accelerator, as very beautifully put by Srilata, is successful, and there is a high demand for this window. And keeping that in mind, the fund is expanding its opportunities under this window, under the new MTS. There would be an expansion of partners, also an expansion of thematic areas. It would be covered under AFCIA. And this ties in well with the fund's ability to then provide scale-up financing for highly successful small innovation grants. So AFCIA is providing the piloting and testing funds, and it could be a vehicle for sourcing innovation from a wider source of actors, but then also creating the pipeline of especially promising innovations in climate change adaptation to be scaled up by the Adaptation Fund under its large grant window, for example. But that being said, the fund is also looking to expand its opportunities through partnerships with other funders for more scaling up funding for innovation specifically. The fund will continue to expand its innovation facility, including expanding and encouraging access to innovation grants by non-accredited entities with a focus on youth, indigenous people, disabled people, researchers, civil society, and private sector. So with that, I would like to conclude by saying that stay tuned. There is a lot more coming up from the fund's innovation facility, and I'm very excited to hear from our local champions and to celebrate their journey and to congratulate UNDP and the small grantees for reaching where they have reached so far. And with that, thank you and best of luck.
Thanks, Alyssa. We have a very exciting video aptly titled Small Grants, Big Impacts to be showcased next to showcase all the grantees who've been part of this ICCCAD project. Could you, video, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now we'll have the presentations. First, we have Sheila again, presenting her work from the Mumbai metropolitan region, where they are closing the loop. Let's find out how. Could we have Sheila's presentation up, please? And Sheila, over to you. Thank you. Sheila, you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay. So let me start again. My organization, Society for the Promotion of Area Resource Centers, I'll just tell you when to move the slide, works in 9 states of India in about 70 cities. And while everybody believes that addressing the challenges of the growth of small towns is critical, what we are seeing actually over the global south is metropolitan regions that are aggregating small towns with large traditional metropolitan places. So MMRDA is one of the 10 metropolitan regions in India, in which, as you will see in this map, 33%, around 33 to 40% of the land mass is cities. This area covers about 20 million people, of which 12 million live in Mumbai, and the rest in the urban parts of the metropolitan region, another 8 million live. And the strategy that we are looking at is to address what happens to those who live in the peri-urban areas, which are the borders of the urban and rural areas. And what we found is that there are 2,500 plus water bodies that are very critical for the green lungs of the metropolitan region on which we are struggling to survive, and whose lives and livelihoods of the people who live in the hamlets around that are critical to not only them, but to the metropolitan region. So using our general philosophy of producing technology and digital data to support people's quest for equity and social justice, we try to do 3 things in this particular project. We have found that around half of them, around 1,075 such water bodies, are in areas of the most poor, vulnerable tribal communities and indigenous communities and traditional people who have lived on the water bodies, who stand to lose these water bodies because their defecation, their waste goes back into these water bodies, and it gives the local municipalities that want to expand this process to close the water body and destroy the lives and livelihoods of these people. So this project helps these over 1,000 plus communities that have fought for the right to maintain these water bodies as public resources, to define where they are located, what do people do over there, what kind of livelihoods they have, and technically to start with providing water and sanitation management that will maintain the clean water supply and use both the fecal matter and the other wastes that they have to produce products that they can upcycle, recycle, and reuse. Now, this is very important not only for the metropolitan region, which represents a very important population for the state of Maharashtra, but to develop this as a standard planning methodology for all the other 9 to 10 metropolitan regions where we believe people are having the same problem. Next slide. The other slides are just the process and the systems. Anirudh Paul, who supervises and trains and assists and mediates between all these technical and non-technical aspects on our collective behalf, produces this. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we have are a whole set of activities where we look at how we work with these communities, and go to the next slide, in meetings, not only in our offices, but in their localities, where we both digitally and visually map the water bodies, look at their water content, and help communities envision what they would like to do there. But what is universally required is, like you said, it's closing that loop, closing that possibility of the E. coli content of that water being very high due to open defecation for lack of processes. So we're looking at ways by which each community can look at what it wants to do, how it wants to improve. We get resources to demonstrate different options and their costs, and then invite the Metropolitan Authority to try and work out ways by which it can make, because it has budgetary allocations to work on these issues. So we want to look at that. So what you will see, go to the next slide, are these amazing detailed documentation of all these different water bodies. Young people from all these areas are taught how to use this material. They come to our office to look at how we digitalize this process, how they can use it, how it will be in the public domain. And what we've done is develop typologies of these water bodies, of where they are, what kind of surfaces are they around, what role do they play in people's lives. And then we are looking at ways by which, with designers who are volunteering to give their space here, to look at how we could make certain investments to transform that water body into something which allows people to work out ways. And the last slide, please, to look at ways by which that cleaned up, healthy water body, with all the infrastructure that we hope to put in, both nature-based and those developed by the engineers, to produce a circular way to manage all the resources that are there for the communities. So we're talking now about 1,071 hamlets that are part of this, and their federation, to whom we will give this material and assist them to have these negotiations with the governments. Just keep going on to the rest of these slides so that I've more or less finished. So these are what the neighborhoods look like. They're hamlets that will be from 35 to about 100 to 500 households, and continue. And then we worked out these typologies. Please change the slide. Next slide, please. Oh, it's frozen. Anyway, we worked out these typologies, so some have soft, some have structured edges, some are wells. Can you not move it? Anyway, for giving all of us time for more discussions, can you please put this slideshow onto the chat box so people can download it if they want. We are very keen to find out whether there are other people in metropolitan regions who'd like to do things like this, because this is an amazing innovation in India. We haven't had anybody who's done this kind of thing. And these young people who are working with us are very, very serious about it. And their capacity to take this forward and maintain it is what excites us, and the range of possibilities that they produce. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. We have actually a question in the Q&A box already for you, and this is kind of related to the work you're doing, but also related to the larger policy advocacy work that you're also involved in. And the question is anonymous, so I don't know who it is from, but thank you for this question. How do you scale up locally led adaptation initiatives so that they become global? Is it must for these initiatives to be replicable, is the question. And if you could shed some light on this, that would be great.
Okay. So I think we truly believe that that many locals produce a new global. And we are champions of locally led adaptation practices. So what we find is that you have to maintain an intensely local focus, but extrapolate innovation, principles, planning systems that will produce a body of knowledge and ideas that local communities can take to their negotiations. So for instance, in the global south, you go Asia, Africa, definitely, and Latin America, metropolitan areas are growing exponentially because the infrastructure that metropolitan cities have draw more and more people. So the areas around there become cities and municipal corporations. And more metropolitan authorities that govern all these 13, 14, 20 cities become the area to negotiate. Now, these are so far away from communities. But this kind of evidence gathering, this detailed, extensive, well-done research, which we will give to the metropolitan region to track, and we will publicly track to see that none of these water bodies are closed down, that they are nurtured, that they produce the ecosystem that is necessary for this 33% of the urban areas to do it. So we are also part of a global network called Slum Dwellers International, which works in 33 countries in Asia and Africa. And as soon as we build this data and this methodology, we will share this with all of them. About half of them are working in metropolitan cities. So that's the kind of scaling up we're talking about. And we want to tell everybody who's working on locally led adaptation that the work on informality is invisible in the COP, in discussions. It's almost like the rural poor are virtuous, but when they come into cities for survival, they become the wicked people who destroy cities. We want to change that. We want to see this as a continuum. And we believe that this kind of systems that challenge traditional planning mechanisms, which are colonially inherited by all of us, have to drastically move out to make space for more socially just and equitable planning systems. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much for your answer. Strikes a chord in many of us. I think all of us have been have seen this, if not visibilized it enough. And so thank you for making it visible. Thank you for making the urban poor visible, Sheila. And we also have Anirudh from Sheila's team, and I wanted Anirudh just to say hi. So if there's any questions, technical questions for Anirudh, please feel free to ask. We shall take questions later. So Anirudh, welcome, and we'll get to questions after we have the other presentations as well. Next, we have Anne-Cecile, and she'll be talking about the Nubian Vault and the work that they are doing in the Sahel. Anne-Cecile, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this invitation. So the Nubian Vault Association was created in 2000, and since almost now 25 years, we've been developing an eco-construction sector to provide green, affordable houses in West Africa. Can you give me next slide, please? So first, I would give you some context according to the IPCC, just as a reminder, because we all know this, but the Sahel is considered to be the region which contributes the least to greenhouse gas emission. However, it is among the world's regions most vulnerable to the effect of climate change. Next slide. So one of the problem, and there are many problems, but one of them is inappropriate housing. And as you can see on this picture, the majority of the Sahelian population is living in extreme temperature under tin roof. So basically, it's like living in an oven, and while being the most exposed to climate change. Next slide. So our mission is to provide decent housing adapted to climate change, I will explain later, and also adapted to socio-economic realities, means with local material, local labor force, and at affordable cost, and this for the many and as soon as possible. Next slide. Our solution is a 3,000-year-old architectural technique called the Nubian vault. Nubian because it is originating from Nubia, Upper Egypt, so it's very old. And this technique enables us to enable the construction of houses entirely made with mud bricks. So it's almost 100% made with earth. So there is no need for timber, no need for cement. It's almost only earth. And there are a lot of advantages. It's more resistant. Can you give me the next slide? I show you some picture. So this is a Nubian vault under construction. So it's a very frugal technique. And as you can see, there is no formal work. It's only, you can build the Nubian vault directly. It's a very specific architectural technique. Next slide. It is very resistant to heavy rain and to violent winds, that are aggravated by climate change. So here it's a Nubian vault house is still under construction because then it will be filled with earth. And next slide, you will see one of the final results. So these houses. And the main benefit for a family living under a Nubian vault is the gain in thermal comfort. You approximately gain ±7 degrees. So it's very significant when you live under temperature like more than 45 degrees. Next slide. So our one thing very important to understand is that we don't build houses. We build a market that will enable the construction of a growing number of Nubian vault houses. So for this, I won't go into the detail, but we support the offer with important vocational training program. Nowadays, there are around 1,200 masons that have been trained and that are active on the Nubian vault market. We also support the demand, and I will come back to this just right after. And we support a positive business ecosystem. And we think that the market-based approach is the best approach to disseminate at a large scale this alternative architectural technique. Next slide. So the market to be able to grow, need to be incentivized, mean that really we can observe this on the field. The main lever for developing the Nubian vault market is the distribution of financial incentives for rural families. I explain. When a family wants to build its Nubian vault house, they will bring around 70% of the global cost in kind. Means that they will make the mud bricks themselves, they will transport the water, they will participate in the construction. There is one part is kind of self-construction, but they will still have to mobilize around 400 euros to pay for the mason and its team salaries and for windows or for doors, material that are not made with earth. And when you live with around $2 a day, and as we are among the poorest communities in the world, 400 euros is quite a big amount of money. So when we give 300 euros as an incentive, because it is not a donation of houses, it's an incentive, 300 euros, they can go and raise the or they can save the 100 additional euros. So this is really the strategy to scale up the program. And so next slide, because the big question now is, how do we fund these financial incentives? In France and in other northern countries, the government helps us when we want to renovate our houses, when we want to make the insulation, we receive money from the government. Obviously, in Mali or in Burkina Faso, the government is not able to help. So we need to find financial mechanism that will fund a growing number of these financial incentives. And that's exactly what we are doing with the ICCCAD grant. Thanks to this grant, so the Nubian Vault building, as I explained, as you understood, is a low carbon footprint construction method, because Earth is very low carbon footprint, because it is widely available locally, and not only the Nubian Vault houses avoid CO2 during the construction phase, but also during the usage phase, where we are technically on a suppressed demand approach, but thanks to the thermal performance. So we can, thanks to basically the mitigation, will fund the adaptation. So as in the introduction, you were saying that we need to look both lens, adaptation and development and mitigation. So the plan is we sell the carbon credits to companies that want to contribute to carbon neutrality mitigation. And with the revenues of the sale of the carbon credits, we found financial incentives so families can build their Nubian Vault houses, adaptation and development. Because when a family builds his Nubian Vault house, obviously it's work for the masons we trained, and they will spend their pay locally. So it's also contributing to local economy reinforcement. So it's really, we try to articulate mitigation, adaptation, and development in a virtuous circle that will iterate as long as possible. And this is our strategy to scale up, because we need money. As any development program, we need money to grow. And we think that we can mobilize the carbon finance with these carbon credits, and that it will be an additional and complementary source of revenue that will sustainably fund these financial incentives. And when the Nubian Vault market in some region is ready enough, we just need to distribute the financial incentives, and that provide not only adapted houses for the community, but also jobs, revenues, and vocational training, and local economy reinforcement, and positive impact for climate and environment. So maybe I stop here for the moment.
Thanks. I will come to the questions towards the end, because I'm pretty sure we will have time to do that. So I now invite Emmanuel from the Moyo District Farmers Association. Sorry about that. And Cecile, thank you so much for your presentation. It's very inspiring, and we definitely have questions lined up for that as well. Emmanuel? And can we have presentation 3 up on the slide, please? Yeah. Lovely. Thank you. Over to you. You're on mute.
Okay, sorry for that. Yeah, this is Emmanuel from Uganda, and we are Moyo District Farmers Association. This is a local NGO which has been in existence since 1998. And it is a community-based organization working for the refugees and the host communities in the districts of Moyo and Obonge. And these refugees are from South Sudan. So as Uganda being neighbors of South Sudan, we have our friends from the neighborhood whom we are hosting. That's the context in which we have refugees. Next slide. Yeah, who are our partners and what are the thematic areas that we plan for? The thematic areas of our intervention are the following: climate change adaptation and mitigation, environment and natural resource management, livelihoods, food and nutrition, financial inclusion, community development, water, sanitation and hygiene, gender equity and gender-based violence, governance and human rights. Those are the thematic areas. And who are our partners? Of course, we have UNDP, that is the United Nations Development Program. We have FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. We have SNV, that is known as Development Organization. And we have V Agroforestry, which is a Swedish organization engaged in agroforestry. And we also have Uganda National Farmers Federation, which is the national umbrella body for all the farmers in Uganda, where we also belong as a member. And of course, the government, both central government and the local government. And finally, we have private companies, and the key one is Mufano Group of Companies, which is heavily engaged in the oilseed value chain development, particularly the sunflower oilseed. Thank you. Next slide. Yes. What are we doing under ICCCAD? You can see those pictures. You go back to the previous slide. Can you move back? Hello.
Emmanuel, we can see the previous
Yes.
slide.
Yes,
Yeah.
that one. It's, yeah, now you've been on that. Yes. So,
Yes.
what are we doing under ICCCAD? Back to the picture. No.
This one. Yeah. Continue,
Yes.
please.
Yes, that one. Yes. Yeah. So under ICCCAD, one of the approaches that we are using is the farmer managed natural regeneration, which is called the FMNR model, where farmers generate based on the existing seed. By seed, we mean the existing plants, tree stumps, trees, and any other vegetation which is available on the land. And this can focus on basically 3 areas. We can regenerate from woodland. That is where you do it in a way that can produce for you wood. You can also do it for a farmland, whereby you do it in a manner whereby the trees can coexist with the plants. or with crops that you grow. So as you benefit from the trees, you also benefit from the foods from the crops. Then we also have that one which focuses on rangelands. Rangelands are the grazing areas, because we also have farmers in our place who have some animals. So this ephemeral model can also help improve on the pasture quality and the pasture quantity for the crops. And you find that if you look at the picture critically, you can look at our friend who is happily standing in one of the areas that he has regenerated. Okay, you can see that now it can be used for other purposes, because even there is now space for planting crops in his area that he has regenerated. So this method is very friendly, using basic tools, and it's very cost effective, because you don't need any other external material apart from the tools and the space that you want to generate. So this is one of the key models we are using to climate proof our farmers. Next slide. Also, the second thing we do under ICCCAD, of course, is supporting the farmers in extension service delivery on climate proof techniques. So you can see that farmer together with one of our staff, okay, and they are looking at their tomato field, and even look at the practices which have been demonstrated there. That is mulching, covering with dry grass, and on the right is this lady using the improved cook stove to conserve wood fuel. Next slide. Yeah, and also we are using the app, the mobile app, for training our farmers. And this mobile app is a support extension because it has information which we call resources, which are technical in nature, which are used by our trainers for teaching these farmers good techniques of farming. And then also this same app is used for M&A. I will keep picking data from time to time from the baseline and midterm up to the end of the project to track progress against the baseline. So that's how we're using the mobile app. Yes. And finally, about engagement of youth, women, and refugees. You can see we have got host communities who are mixed up with the refugees as a way of integrating them and for peaceful coexistence, and also for sharing of knowledge. Yeah, so that is how we engage our women, our refugees, and the youth as special interest groups. Yes. And next slide. This next. Yeah, let's talk about sustainability and how we intend to sustain the current activities that we are doing. One is we're going to continue extension service delivery by supporting these services through our local revenue. We have our members who subscribe to the association. Then we also have tractor hire services where we get some proceeds and we plow it into extension support. And we also have commissions from sale of produce, which can be used to enhance our income to support farmer training. Then about the app, the climate agri-solution app, we shall use our internal revenue to support hosting of this app, and also make use of this app by the trainers. So all this we shall be able to sustain from our locally generated revenue. Then the third point is we're going to foster and manage strategic collaborations and partnerships with our local governments and with other partners, so that we can enhance service delivery to our members through our partnerships and collaborations with other partners. Areas of scale up. One area we're looking at is enhancing the carbon sink potential of our carbon sinks, mainly the wetlands, the woodlands, the bushlands, forests, and the trees, among others, by increased restoration and conservation efforts, which are supported by internal revenue and through other supportive collaborations. And then we're also looking at building and strengthening the capacity of our local community members in climate adaptation and mitigation approaches through scaling up of the climate proving trainings. We are going to reach more community members using this same approach. The current target is very small compared with the demand. And finally, we shall also encourage our commercial farmers to do a small-scale irrigation for building resilience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Manuel. Lovely presentation. Very, very inspiring to see photographs of the actual impact you're making on the ground. Next, we have Jamul from Philippines, who will be talking about their work in indigenous protected lands in the Philippines. Jamul, can we see you, please? Jamul,
Yes,
are you there? Yes, thank you.
Yes, can you see me? Yes.
Not yet. Yes, now we can. Excellent. Thank you. There's your presentation. If we can have it in the presentation mode. Perfect. Thank you. All yours.
Okay. So, next slide, please.
Sorry, and just a reminder, very gentle reminder that you have 5 to 6 minutes to present it. Thanks.
Yes. Next slide, please. I'm Dato Sangko and Jamuel Carino from the Philippines, and the chairman of our Council of Elders. And it is a Bukidnon Umayam ng tribe Kaponan at the
Jamul, sorry, we are struggling to hear you. Maybe you switch off video while you talk, and that might help us hear you better.
Okay. Thank you. Next slide.
No
please.
worries. We can see,
my
we
best.
saw you, said hello. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Our group is we are the one of the one. Within our social domain, and it's the responsibility of the Council of Elders to take care of our ancestral domain. Next slide, please. Can we have the next slide, please? Next slide, please. Can we
Jamul,
forward? Yes.
Yeah, could you also come closer to your mic, please?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
A little
next
better.
slide, please.
A little better.
Yes, we are situated in the Malaybalay City, Bukidnon, Philippines, and we have started the work in this project in April of 2022. We are finishing in September of this year, 2023. Next slide, please. So the primary objectives of our work here is to help in the mitigation of climate change impacts and accelerate the rehabilitation of the denuded riverbanks and also generate sustainable income for our indigenous peoples. We are mandated by law to rehabilitate the denuded Can we have the next slide, please? It's really weak signal. The next slide, please. Hello? Oh, yeah. So there are some expected significant project impacts, and we are able to provide a small income to our members through temporary or short-term employment. And I'm showing also here the progress of our work. This is just the 8-month-old bamboo plantation. We are using the giant bamboo, Dendrocalamus asper, and our cacao is already 9 months. Next slide, please. So we also train our youth, and just recently we had our basic financial management systems training, and mostly this second generation. Next slide, please. And there are at least 3 IP leaders, IP women leaders within our Council of Elders. They are part of decision making for ancestral domain. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
I'm afraid it's difficult to hear you, Jamil. Is and thank you, audience, for your patience in this. Internet challenges are a reality of our day. So thank you for bearing with us. And Jamil, very sorry that you have bad connection. I think he had to drop off, but it's very exciting, that project where they're working with indigenous communities and training young people, worried about intergenerational equity and ensuring that they preserve their lands and their resources for future generations as well. Thanks. And I think with that, we'll move to questions for now. And if Jamil is back with better internet connection, we can take the presentation if we have time. Can we have the panelists on screen, if you can, if it's possible? Thank you. There's a question in chat, which I want to start with. It's for Sheila and Anirudh. You can choose who wants to go for answering this question. But it's basically, it's from Lucia from CDKN, and she says, thanks, Sheila, the work sounds great. How were the youth organized or mobilized to do this work? Were they already part of an organization? Were they individuals that were brought together? If so, in which way?
Sheila, you want me to answer the question?
Yes, please, because I think you need to do as much honors in this as you are working on the field most of the time. So do take it over.
It's okay, because like we have been working with the youth at various levels from the beginning itself, right from the inception. The people whom we inducted in this project, like they were young architectural interns whom we had taken for the project. So it starts right from there, who were made aware of this whole issue of water and sanitation, because like generally I don't want to go into this architectural education the way it is constituted in our countries. It always serves a certain section of society. So that starts right from there to get them inducted into the process. Now, when we took into the ground, where we were doing work with the ground to create the database, so what we did was, there were organizations in these MMR who were working on other issues. Like one organization I must tell you is called the Sramjeevi Sangatana. It's a organization of of a group of people who work on tribal people. They work with tribal people. So we worked closely with them to document these water bodies. In fact, what we did was, we stayed in their houses, like the architectural interns also. We stayed in their houses, as well as they actually got us, because some of them actually had some auto rickshaws, or maybe sometimes they had some sort of they used to have livelihood in terms of running auto rickshaws. So we took those, and they took us to all these water bodies, and so we made them a part of the documentation process right from the beginning. And as I'm saying, most of us stayed in their places, so, and they got involved into the process about what this project is about. Because in the face of it, at one point, the government, what it does is, the government, when they look into these water bodies, they have this standard approach called beautification, in which what they do is they concretize the edge of the water body, spoiling the whole ecosystem. First, they increase the heat of this, like in the near the water body through heat island effect by concretization, and they spoil the riparian vegetation. So we are trying to explain to the youth how the nature-based solutions are so important to adopt to be able to counter climate change, like by protecting riparian vegetation, by actually treating the sewage. You can create a system by which you can improve the quality of the water body. So this has always been an attempt. So the youth that we have worked with are already organized, but working in some other vertical, and we are now getting them to this vertical. So that's how we have been working them, and we have been using all their resources for this documentation process. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Thank you. And I think with that, I move to asking a question to Anne-Cécile. Anne-Cécile, your work around, if I may term them as pro-poor carbon credit, is really interesting. And there is an element of justice within that. If you could articulate the additional value that is generated from that process, it'll help us understand the whole process of that's super complicated, that process of carbon credits and how they work out for the poorest of the poor very well. So over to you.
Thank you. Yes, we don't really like to talk about carbon credits because we think it's a reduced term. We prefer talking about climate solidarity contribution, because it is not only mitigation. Mitigation, obviously, CO2 is avoided, so we can issue the carbon credits. But building a Nubian Vault houses, it's also a lot of co-benefits. First, a family, as I said, living under a Nubian Vault improve its life condition, its better health condition, its better studying condition. Above all, it's better. The temperature is better inside a Nubian Vault. And for example, some families, they say that it's like having air conditioning. So it's adaptation. Secondly, it is work and revenues for the masons. And so it will reinforce their business model. They will be able to hire apprentices and to grow their business, so they can increase their revenues. And as I said before, they will it helps local economy reinforcement. And maybe I didn't insist enough on this last point. The Nubian Vault house, the Nubian Vault architectural technique doesn't need to use timber. So it does contribute to the preservation of forest. So all these co-benefits, it's what we call adaptation and development. And we advocate for these co-benefits to be better integrated in the carbon credit system, not only to value the carbon reduction, because the reality is that climate change is already here, and in the Sahel, climate change effects are already there. So we do need urgently to invest and massively in adaptation plan. So as the carbon credit will foster projects with high mitigation impact, we need to invent, to create the impact credit, something broader, and because we need money for adaptation. And these carbon credits, honestly, it's just a very smart way to raise money so we can fund this very necessary project for adaptation and mitigation. And when we can mix both of them, mitigation leading to adaptation and development, adaptation leading to mitigation, that's what we think is the added value of our carbon credits on the market.
Thank you so much. That's enlightening to say the least. We have Jamil who's back, and hopefully, Jamil, your audio will work. We don't need I think we can, in the interest of time, get on with questions to you, Jamil. And I think the one question that I have is I'm intrigued by the fact that I'm always intrigued by the fact that it's a council of elders within an indigenous community working towards protecting its own land. And so I'd like to know a little bit about your journey and how the tenure structure or the rights to your land are. So is it like a collective tenured land, or are these individual lands that you're working on?
Yes. Before I became the chairman of the Council of Elders, it was my father who served as the chairman of the Council of Elders. He was the chieftain of our tribe. And as early as 1992, I have served as the technical advisor for the Council of Elders. And when my father passed away in 2003, I wanted to disappear from the scene, but the tribe has requested me to kindly continue the work of my father. So I decided to stay and help my tribe. That's the reason why I'm so involved in the work of our Council of Elders. We are in an ancestral domain context, and the ownership in the ancestral domain is private to our tribe, but it is communal in use, communal in nature. So we work in our ancestral domain, but it's for everybody, and including the next generation. So it's very difficult task, heavy task, because apart from the difficulty of surviving during these hard times, we have to also make sure that the next generation will have their safe journey and safe territory in our area. And we have the law to protect us in the Philippines called the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act. However, even if we have now the recognized ancestral domain, about 8,100 hectares, we don't have the funds. It did not come with the funding. So all our people are so in difficult situation, especially during the COVID time, peak of the COVID. And it just so happened that we were also considered by AFCA for this project, and it really helped a lot because our people are gaining dignity in the community, and of course we want to pursue this work, and hopefully we'll be able to sustain this. We just have 10 hectares of giant bamboo this time, and 10 hectares of cacao plantation, but our members, especially the women involved in the families, they are also interested to continue, and we don't have enough funds to cover the scaling. That's the reason why we are still working and applying for some more grants that we could also accommodate our other women and other IP leaders who are also interested, who volunteer to be part of this work. So that's how we're doing our work now, and that's my short biography. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very inspiring to those of us who are working in this space. Emmanuel, I'm sorry, as the last speaker, you bear the brunt of timekeeping. But if you could answer in very brief, if you could answer this question we had for you. So do you think that working around climate smart agriculture and other actions that help build resilience has helped communities, which are the host communities and the refugee communities in areas that you work with? Do you think that they have found common ground, and has this reduced potential conflict? Just something that we're curious about and we'd like to know a little bit more about. And you're on mute if you're talking.
Thank you. I've been disturbed by the network. It was on and off. Could you repeat the question?
I asked if your interventions as part of the Moyo District Farmers Association have supported communities in finding common ground, and has it helped efforts around peace building, reducing conflict?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. Yeah, yes, indeed, if you look at our approach of integration of the local communities with the refugees, that is one way of bringing them together so that they don't conflict. Because if they engage together in social and economic and other climate-proofing activities, definitely it has a bearing on their social cohesion. And from the time we began engagement with these refugees and the host communities, we have not had cases of conflicts being registered in those communities where we are working. Since though we don't have the empirical data from so far, what we have seen, it has truly brought in harmony among the communities. Thank you.
That's evidence in itself, isn't it? And on that very encouraging note of reduced conflicts and increased peace in the world, I'd like to invite Dr. Salim ul Haq to give the final word. Salim needs no introduction, so over to you, Salim.
Thank you very much, Shuchi, and good evening from Dhaka to everybody. It's been a pleasure listening to all your excellent pieces of work. I just want to share with you a little bit our experience of being involved in this. This started, as you know, this is our third Gobeshona conference. So this idea started 2 years ago at the first global Gobeshona conference about one of the big barriers to supporting locally led adaptation is the inability of the major funders, whether they are global funders or national funders, to provide small amounts of money to small groups of people doing very good work. It's just not cost effective for them to do that. They want to give big amounts of money to big organizations. That's their modus operandi. That's the way they work. And they find it very, very difficult to give small amounts, relatively small amounts, to small groups. And we challenged them, saying, why cannot it be done? And we were successful in getting a couple of funders to give us a relatively modest amount of funding to provide these small grants that we have been giving for the last couple of years. And I must say, it's been a difficult experience for us also, because handling small grants and providing them do have difficulties. You know, the transaction cost of giving $5,000 is a very big proportion of the $5,000, whereas the transaction cost of giving $100,000 is a very small proportion of the $100,000. And we were not a grant making body ourselves, we're a research institute. So we had to learn about grant making, the procedures and the banking systems, and I guess sending funds to different countries, because not every country is the same. Some countries have greater restrictions on how to send the money to them, and we'll have to learn all of that. So we went through a very steep learning curve ourselves in providing the support to all of you. My colleague Adiba deserves a lot of recognition for having took us on this journey and successfully got us up to speed. And I'm now very proud that my center is now able to do this. You know, we have proven our track record, and you have proven the validity of this process, that a small grant to a small group of people can actually result in a very significant outcome that we can then build on and take forward. And so I want to add my thanks to all of you for the excellent work that you've done. It's very impressive, I must say. I'm extremely impressed. And I hope that we can continue to provide these smaller grants going forward in Gobeshona, and that every year we get the next batch of grantees to come and tell their stories. And we, from our side, will be able to publicize them and disseminate the stories to a much wider public. And I'm very sure that this particular session, where you have told us your stories, will be something that not only people have been watching live, which I know they have, but the recordings, our experience from last year's Gobeshona is that while we get a good number of people watching the sessions live, we then put the recordings up on our YouTube channel. And over time, the recording viewership is very significantly higher than the live participation. So people will know about this, and then they will watch the recording in their own time, because right now, you know, it may not be convenient for them to have joined online. But when it's convenient, they have the time to look at the session, they will actually look at it. So the dissemination of the recording itself is a very useful dissemination of your presentations and your work as well. So I want to thank each and every one of you who received the grant, used the grant for your excellent activities, and I hope that you will now be able to build on what you have done and continue to do this, because the grant is just a way, one step further in your journey, but the journey we hope will continue and not stop when the grant stops. So let me stop there and thank Shuchi and our colleagues for helping us in this process. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. And good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody. Have a great day. Have a great evening and a happy weekend to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.